Hello, friends, and welcome back. Today's episode is extra special as I'm going to be talking about something a bit more personal and getting a lot more real about something that I had personally struggled with, but was able to overcome. This was a highly requested episode from y'all, and just know that this will hit home for so many of you guys as well. If you are enjoying the podcast and do want to hear more from the Nourish to Thrive podcast, it would mean the world for you to give this a rating and review, just so I know that you guys like these episodes and want to hear more. Now, let's get into it. I thought I would start this off by just giving a little bit of backstory for those who are not familiar with my story. I did post my story as one of the first episodes, so be sure to check that out as well. But just to follow up with that, I struggled with my relationship with food for many years of my young adult life. And as a result of not having a healthy relationship with food and really just not fueling my body with enough, I did not have my period for about 6 to 7 years. I forget because it's like so long ago since I struggled with that, but I just know that I did not have my period for many years and really didn't put much thought into it. I just figured that, I was young and that it was just going to come back on its own eventually. I didn't really consider that as a big red flag. And it was something that I just kind of, thought that was normal at that point. But it really hit me after getting a DEXA scan and realizing that my bone health was not in great shape as a result of not having my period for so many years that I had this realization in college like, oh my gosh, I really need to get my period back. And what I'm doing right now is not probably the healthiest thing that I should be doing. And that was my relationship with exercise. When I started college, and I would also say it was kind of at the end of high school and the beginning of college, I got really into lifting weights. I honestly, looking back at this now, I realized that going from an eating disorder to weightlifting was definitely not the smartest or healthiest choice I could have made because really all this did was kind of mask my eating disorder in the form of something that was more socially acceptable. So I got super into tracking my food and going to the gym like 6 days a week and using this identity as a weightlifter as my permission slip to eat food and to gain weight. But all this really did was keep me from gaining the weight that I needed to and kept me super, super lean and muscular. And this was partially why I was not getting my period back as well, is because I was at such a low body fat percentage, in addition to just not eating enough food and working out all the time, that my body just was under so much stress that my hormones were just completely non existent. And I remember back in college, I had to sit down and really just be honest with myself if what I was doing was truly healthy. Because when I looked in the mirror, I saw myself as somebody who was super thin. But on a daily basis, I didn't feel that way. And this is what body dysmorphia is when you don't see the reality of your body. After taking a good hard look at myself and realizing that I just did not look healthy, I did not look like a college student. I was like, okay, something needs to change. And I've been trying so hard to gain weight while continuously exercising that something's just not working. I could not eat enough for the demands that my body needed to where I could continue lifting and gain weight. So I believe it was my junior year of college that I decided and dedicated to myself that I was going to take as much time as I needed to off of exercise until my period was restored. And this was truly one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do for myself because I'm telling you guys, I love exercise. I loved exercise back then as well, but it was something that was far more than just loving it. I was addicted to it. It was something I feel like I needed to do. I would literally live and breathe the gym and would spend so many hours every single week at the gym. I also realized because of this that because I spent so much time at the gym, I wasn't living my life the way that a college student should live. I wasn't going out with my friends on Friday nights. I wasn't going to parties. I was literally spending all of my time thinking about food, meal prepping early morning on Sundays, going to the gym, doing extra cardio sessions, and watching my health just fall apart. I almost felt like I didn't even know who I was anymore because I knew for a fact that the girl that I was seeing was not myself. I didn't have that spark in my eye. I didn't have that glow. I didn't have the motivation to be myself. And I didn't have the time for friends because I was so addicted to this lifestyle that I thought was healthy at the time. And so by taking this time off of exercise, it was my goal not only to get my period back, but to get myself back. I wanted to feel happy again because while it felt like I was happy, it really was this false sense of happiness. I was using food and exercise as a way to fill the void that I felt in my life, and it was truly just isolating. I remember calling my mom and telling her, "Hey, I'm not going to the gym." And I remember her checking in with me even just like a couple days later. She's like, "Did you go to the gym?" And I was like, "I did not." And that was something that was also really hard because I had to give up this identity that I thought that I had of this girl who lifts weights. I took so much pride in my body and all the quote unquote progress that I thought I was making, but it was actually so far from being healthy. And during this time that I took off of exercise, I grew and learned so much about myself, and it showed me how to slow down and be more present in my life. It taught me that weight gain is okay and that, women don't need to be at a low body fat percentage to be healthy or to be beautiful because the reality is most women don't understand that when you are at a super low body fat percentage, you will start to experience hormone issues. Everybody has their own kind of threshold of as to how much body fat they need to get their periods, but if you dip below that, your body will shut down those reproductive functions. I knew going into this that I was going to gain weight and that I was going to see my body change, which arguably was the hardest part, even though not actually doing the exercise was hard, but seeing and knowing that my body was going to change was really, really hard for me as well. And this is why it was so crucial for me not only to focus on the process of restoring my health and gaining weight, but also reframing my mindset about my body and shifting my beliefs about weight gain and not being so afraid of having fat on my body. I feel like our culture is so wrapped around this idea that women need to look a certain way or have curves in all the right places for them to be beautiful or worthy or more loved by others. But the truth is, the people that truly matter in your life should not care about those things. Because I realized that I was just pushing people further and further away when I was at my skinniest. And so if you are at that point, what's the point of being thin or being skinny or being muscular if you have no social life or relationships that make you feel like yourself? So while the weight gain was initially hard for me to accept and be comfortable with, I was not so focused on that as I was more focused on spending more time with others, rebuilding the relationships that I thought I had lost, improving my relationship with food, stepping away from tracking and actually learning how to eat intuitively, which was a process in itself. It also showed me that I didn't need to work out to deserve the right to eat. So during this time, it wasn't just time wasted. It was time that I spent more focused on bettering myself as a person and finding hobbies outside of the gym. So for those of you listening who may be in a similar position, ask yourself, what hobbies and interests do you actually have that are not food or exercise related? And if you cannot think of any, that's a sign that maybe you need to take a step back and reevaluate your life and your intentions with exercise. I will say that I think that the reason it took me so long to actually get my period back, and I will also say that I did get my period back 6 months later, and I'll explain the story in a second. But the reason it took me so long to get my period back, and I think it's related to the fact that I went so many years without it, that my body just needed more time to realize that, I wasn't starving myself, that I was fueling my body with enough, and that the stressors were reduced via exercise and just mental stress. But also because when I first started this journey, I did stop lifting weights, but I was still forcing myself to go on super long walks. And I was still kind of in this transition of like being super fixated on tracking my steps. And so, because it took me so long to also let go of that as well, it was also why it took me so long to get my period back. And this is why I do recommend people to just cut ties with things that make you feel anxious, whether it be tracking your steps, not going to the same gym, or just, canceling your gym membership, because the more that you are surrounded by those triggers and things that make you want to exercise or make you feel guilty for not exercising, it's going to make the process so much harder to do. But once I finally, cut that out and really settled down and focus more on restorative movement like yoga and just shorter walks, and I actually stopped wearing I had a Fitbit at the time and literally was obsessed with that thing. I had like a tan line from it because I just never took that thing off. Haven't worn that in years. I believe I took it off and never put it back on. And it's something that I'm so glad that I don't have fixated on anymore because, oh, I was so obsessed with that thing. But if you can get rid of those tracking tools, it will make the process so much easier and you're not going to be focused on it. So that is one of my biggest tips about this. But onto the story of when I actually did get my period back, because it was kind of really interesting. So I had no idea that it was going to come back. And I actually was starting to feel like this process was completely worthless because I didn't experience any signs that my period was going to come back. I felt like I was just gaining all this weight and that all of my efforts of eating more and sleeping more and resting more were all going to waste, until one day I was during class actually, and I was wearing some really tight leggings. I was just sitting there and I felt something and rushed to the restroom. And before I knew it, my period was there. So sorry if that's TMI, but that's just the way that the world works. And that's just the way it was. But I was so just completely mind blown. I don't remember if I waited until after class, but I remember calling my mom right away, telling her. I was almost on the verge of crying because I was just so ecstatic that in just so much disbelief that this was actually real, because I just remember so many doctors and gynecologists telling me that I was never going to get it back, or that I had to take birth control to quote unquote regulate my periods, which is not the way it works. Like, this is a topic for another day, but going on birth control is not going to get you your natural period back. So I'm just going to say that, and we'll continue that conversation someday else. But I did feel hopeless for a long time, and I felt like I was the exception to the rule and that my period was just never going to come back. But when it did, I just felt this huge weight off my shoulders. I felt so accomplished. I felt like all the things that I was doing was worth it. And as hard as this journey was for me, it was 1,000% worth it. And if you are somebody who is dealing with a missing period, I want you to know that even though the things that you have to do to get it back is so, so hard, it is also so worth it, because your health matters. And if you're not getting your period when you should be, that is a sign that your body's not healthy. It doesn't matter if you're exercising 6 days a week. That's not healthy if you don't have your period. It doesn't matter how many fruits and vegetables you're eating or how clean your diet is. You're not healthy if you're not getting your periods. Your hormones are the foundation of your body, and they regulate so many different processes. And you will start to experience bone loss, osteoporosis, cardiovascular issues if you prolong the process of getting your period back. Take this as your sign to start taking your health seriously. And if you need to, working with a dietitian can be super, super helpful. And I do help certain clients with this as well. If you do just need more support and guidance as to how and what to do in order for you to get your period back, because everybody's situations are so different as well. And there's going to be different ways we can go about getting your period back that's going to be the easiest for you. But with that being said, I wanted to talk about how I added back in exercise once I started to get my period back, because I know this is going to be a question that I get. I knew I had to wait. I knew that adding back exercise or intense exercise right away was not going to be the best, because if you add exercise back in too soon, you're very likely going to lose it again, or you're going to be delaying your periods. I realized that all the work that I had put into getting it back, I did not want to lose all that progress. So I told myself that I was going to wait 3 to 4 months, seeing if I was getting consecutive periods each and every month, and really focusing on if I was ovulating and making sure that I was getting just real period bleeds. So something that wasn't just like one day. I was making sure that they were real bleeds happening like 3 to 5 days, and that my periods were actually healthy before I started even thinking about going back to the gym. And because I took so much time off, my relationship with my body had changed so much. And I had this newfound appreciation for what my body could do. I made the intention to really just ease back into lifting with new intentions. I stopped following bodybuilders. I stopped following all these fitness accounts on Instagram during this time off. And that truly did help so much with my mindset, because it's going to be really hard to feel like what you're doing is okay if all you follow are those types of accounts. I'm telling you, half of those accounts are very disordered in themselves. Just be mindful about what you are consuming on social media, because it might be time to cut ties with those things as well. So going back to the gym, I just started to make my own workouts. I wasn't focused on bodybuilding or going in with the intention that I'm going to change my body or lose weight, or putting any kind of expectation as to what I was doing initially. And I also started to make workouts that were actually fun. So it wasn't about, again, trying to shape my body a certain way. It was about, what can I do as from a functionality standpoint? Like, what can I push my body to do in a strength standpoint? I started setting fitness goals that were not aesthetic related and more focused on just improving physically. Like, how can I get my first pull up? Or can I improve how many push-ups I'm getting? Or can I see if I can improve my squat form? And this is the mindset that I have today with exercise as well. And I truly do have the healthiest relationship with food, my body, and exercise that I've ever had in my entire life. Because even before I got into weightlifting and before my eating disorder, I didn't really exercise. I kind of just played outside and just kind of had fun. And I remember even when I was in my eating disorder, I was just so focused on cardio and like burning calories. But truly today, I'm just focused on things that are going to be sustainable for me. And sometimes that means I work out 3 days a week. Sometimes that's 4. I will say that I hardly work out 5 days a week, because I just love that extra rest day. And I listen to my body. I never force myself to get in a workout if I'm not feeling it, like mentally or physically. And I am way more focused on my career, my relationships, than I am about getting in a workout, because I will always prioritize those other things before my workout. It's not to say that I don't care about my health, because I do try to move my body every single day, even if it's just going for a walk outside, because that truly helps me so much with my mental health and just getting fresh air. But I just know myself that if I were to be on a strict regimen with exercise, that would be just a downward spiral for me. And so I just don't put that expectation on myself. And because of this, I'm not obsessed with tracking my food, or I'm not concerned about what my step count is every single day. And this is something that I can maintain for the rest of my life. It's not something that I feel like I ever feel guilty for, taking rest days, or ever feel obligated to get in an extra workout. This is what having a healthy relationship with food and exercise looks like. And looking back, I'm so grateful for my past self for taking that time off of exercise to help me realize what I truly wanted from life. And I knew that what I was doing was not the way that I wanted to live my life. I know change can be very scary, but you have to ask yourself, what if it all works out? What if it works out better than I've ever imagined? What if by doing this hard thing that I actually end up being happier and healthier? If you are missing your period, I want you to know that it's very important to understand that every single person's journey is going to be different. So please do not compare what you're doing to what I did or somebody else that you see on social media, because your body is very unique and very different than anybody else's. And while the same rules do apply for getting your period back of needing to reduce stress, because that ultimately what it is, because underfueling is stress, overexercising is stress, and being stressed about what you eat and what your body looks like all the time, in addition to life stress, that is all stress. And what we need to do is reduce the amount of stressors that we have in our lives in order for that period to come back. And like I mentioned earlier, if you do need more support and guidance on getting your period back or have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me. My information is down in the show notes. And for anybody who needs this reminder, you can do hard things. And you know what? It's okay to ask for help. There were so many times that I asked for help during my own journey, and I don't think I could have done this without a support system. I do not think I could have done this without accountability, because there were a lot of rough days. And being able to stay on track, even on those rough days or weeks that you're having, helps you so much to continue to stay on your own journey. I want to thank you guys for listening in today, and stay tuned for another episode soon. And let me know if you guys would like to hear more podcast episodes about hormones, hormone health, or anything related to amenorrhea, as I know this is a serious topic that many of you struggle with. I will catch you guys in the next episode.